All right. Well, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Ward. I'm the Director of Planning here at the Texas Homeless Network. There was about 130 people registered for this webinar at last count. So I imagine we'll continue to see folks rolling in for the next couple of minutes. But if you are intending to participate in the Balance of State Continuum of Care General Membership Meeting, you're in the right place. Um, we do have a pretty full agenda today, and we'll get started here shortly. I thought it might be helpful for the other THN staff to introduce themselves, if that would be all right. And Mary, I'm looking at you since you have your camera on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Dahlke. I'm the Director of Engagement for the Texas Balance of State at Texas Homeless Network.
And then we have a couple of folks running tech in the background. Hope Rogers, if you would introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi there. I'm Hope Rogers. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the COC Performance Manager for Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care.
I'm not going to put everyone else on the spot from THN because there are a number of staff in attendance. But if you have any issues, please, Hope's getting some shout outs in the comments there already. Please send somebody a direct message. You can send a message to panelists or to hosts, and that'll come to me or Hope directly. And then just real quick in terms of housekeeping, this session is being recorded, so it'll be available for review at the end of today's session. It'll probably take us a little bit to get it up on the website, so I would be looking for it tomorrow at the earliest. And then the structure of these meetings, it's been a while since we've done a COC general membership meeting in this structure. So the way that we're planning to have this conversation go is what we call community conversations, where THN staff, and in this case, Cloudburst Consulting, talk with the general membership about a specific topic. And then we kind of open it up for discussion. So we are intending for this to be a participatory process. I mentioned earlier that folks are on mute by default just because of the size of the room, the number of people in the room. So when we get to that discussion part, we're just going to kind of have to see how it goes. If you want to try to come off mute, raise your hand. We'll unmute you if we can. If not, chat will probably be the more efficient way. And so, trying to think, Mary or Hope, is there anything else that I'm forgetting in terms of that section? Otherwise, the remainder of the meeting is updates. So we have a few updates on the supplemental NOFO, the annual Continuum of Care program competition, general announcements, and then we'll talk a little bit about our next meeting, which will be in September of 2024. So the first item on the agenda is the community conversation. We are hoping to talk today with you. We are joined by the Cloudburst Consulting Group. I am going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'm not going to kind of keep you all on the hook for too much longer. But the topic of today's meeting is modernizing the continuum of care. And so we're going to talk more about what that means, more specifically about how you can get involved and what's been done already. So I am going to ask, Hope, are you?
Yeah, hey, while I'm sharing my screen, it looks like we have someone with their hand raised.
Hey, Sunny, did you have a question or are you working through the buttons? Great. Well, I'm going to keep us moving along into the PowerPoint. So this discussion is important for a variety of reasons. Hope, could you take us to the next slide? One of the things that we hear at THN regularly from Continuum of Care membership is the need to provide different, better support to communities, right? The Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care is one of about 390 COCs in the United States, but it is by far the both most, in terms of population and geographic size, an outlier in the COC world, right? And so the Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care is 215 counties. Those 215 counties hold about 40% of the state's population. It is on orders of magnitude larger than most COCs, both in terms of population of people experiencing homelessness, and then geography. So when you layer those three things together, we encounter challenges in the balance of state that simply don't exist in other continuums of care by large. So one of the things that we here again have heard is that THN, I think we as the collaborative applicant and lead agency of the COC, we're not in your community most of the time, right? Like people just got through putting their community in the chat. There's so many different communities and organizations represented here. Most of our staff at THN is in Austin or in the Austin area. We do have some folks that are scattered throughout Texas in the Denton area, and then the areas kind of surrounding the Central Texas region. But we, even though we're not in community with you, we are in community in spirit, and we are dedicated to prioritizing the needs of people experiencing homelessness and the organizations that are working most closely with them. So this idea is, most of the time, a continuum of care is in a single community or a small cluster of communities, and so it's hard for us to approximate the resourcing, the coordination, support that exists in a single county or small continuum of care at that 215 county level. And so the Texas Balance of State COC board has tasked staff at THN with exploring this idea of regionalization. Regionalization is kind of what it sounds like, right? How do we provide support to communities in a way that is both more efficient and more effective? And so we have been exploring options to modernize the supports that we offer to communities in ways that will, improve the outcomes for people experiencing homelessness and support the work that y'all are doing at the local level. Texas is growing leaps and bounds. Last year we added the most number of people, physical human beings, in the state of Texas of any state in the United States. It wasn't the largest by percentage population growth, but we're talking about close to 500,000 people came to Texas in 2023 alone, and our COC has not changed structure-wise since about 2013 in terms of like the communities that participate or the governance structure of the continuum of care. And so we're really interested in how we can improve what we're doing in ways, again, that are more efficient, more effective, and that support the work that y'all are doing at the local level. And so with that, I thought actually I was going to turn it over to the Cloudburst folks on the next slide. But I wanted to take you quickly first through a timeline of the work that's been done thus far on regional or on modernization. Hope, could you take us to the next slide? So this conversation has been happening for a while in the balance of state. We've recognized for a number of years that there may be a better way to offer support to communities and folks experiencing homelessness. So as far back as 2020, we were doing things like conducting the COC's gaps analysis of housing and services using a regionalized framework. We do have some continuum of care committees that are structured on a regional basis, so that we hope to, and through doing that, hope to kind of honor and recognize the needs of regions of that larger 215 county area. But back in 2020, We had a VISTA member or Volunteers in Service to America VISTA program member. If you're not familiar with VISTA, it's a phenomenal program put on by the federal government through CNCS that looks at increasing capacity in communities through various initiatives. And so in 2020, the VISTA member that we had at THN researched regionalization and presented their findings to staff. And you know, it was kind of something that we filed and thought we would try to implement in the coming years. In 2021, staff presented to the COC board that same VISTA member, the COC board, we set up a staff regionalization work group looking at ways that we might be able to regionalize the work that we're doing. I think we landed initially on point in time count. So point in time count lead training done by region. And at that time, the regionalization was included in the COC's 3-year strategic plan. And so we are now on year 3 of that 3-year strategic plan, and haven't, you know, not made a ton of progress in that time. 2022, there wasn't really a lot on regionalization. I think we determined that the point in time count was maybe not the best place to start regionalization pilot. And so fast forward, the board at that time asked staff to revisit regionalization. And so Mary and I presented a presentation similar to this, or this first part, the timeline anyway, to the COC board back in November of 2023. And that resulted in a renewed focus from the COC board to explore this concept of regionalization. Late 2023, THN staff contacted the SNAP's office at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to offer, or to request rather, more intentional targeted support around this idea of regionalization and what we're now calling modernization of the continuum of care. And with that, I think I said way more than I was supposed to, but I'm going to turn it over now to the Cloudburst folks. Hope if you could take us to the next slide and take it away, Ashley.
Hi, everybody. That was a great intro, Jim. Nice and thorough about some of the recent history as well. My name is Ashley Barker-Tolman. I use she, her pronouns. I work with the Cloudburst group, and there are 3 of us on this team supporting just this planning and discussion. And we look forward to sharing some thoughts with you and hearing back from you what you think would be most beneficial for your communities and the support they receive going forward. So we'll just maybe can roll through a quick intro of the team, and you'll get a sense for where we're based. I don't think I mentioned I'm based largely out of Salt Lake City, Utah. We're all in different locations, and happy to be coming together to work in Texas. Katie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Peterson. I use she, her pronouns. I am obviously with the Cloudburst group. I am based out of the Chicago suburbs, but I'm actually in rural Tennessee right now. And I am actually also helping the Texas Balance Estate with your rural SNOFO grantee located in the Panhandle. So happy to be here, and thanks for having me. Alexa?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexa Timrick. I'm a research analyst with the Cloudburst Group, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm reporting in from Madison, Wisconsin. And I think we can move on to the next slide, and I'll jump into describing the work that we've done so far, and then how that leads into the discussion today. So starting here, we just wanted to level set and give you an understanding of some of the documents we worked with the THN staff to identify as important for informing our part of this discussion. So there's a collection of documents, meeting notes, meeting recordings, and documents that have been informed by data that's been collected from the community broadly, both qualitative and quantitative, both for the purposes of understanding and bringing that into this work, but also in avoiding duplication of effort as we're moving forward. And we're going to be asking for some information from input from the community broadly. And so on this next slide is a broad summary of what we pulled out of that information. So there's a lot of information to go through because THN and the Texas Balance of State COC has been very active in understanding their system, but we kept seeing this overwhelming theme that was present across many documents that related to a desire for more action, for more capacity, all of which came back to a ability to provide additional on-the-ground support, which had then brought us back to that capacity issue. So you'll see some of these are pulled direct quotations from various documents, from various items that we reviewed. And this was largely what we wanted to bring in order to level set this conversation of we're seeing over and over again that there's a need for more capacity, a need for more support, but that capacity can't come from nowhere, which leads to some of our discussion that I'll pass off to my colleague.
Thank you, Alexa. A lot of my work in technical assistance and even coming into homeless service response has been in balance of state world. I used to run a balance of state and have worked with a variety of balance of state continuums of care. And to the points that Jim was making earlier, while capacity always is a little bit of a challenge when you're dealing with a lot of people, broad geography, and a lot of counties, it is especially so based on really the size and scope of what the Texas Balance of State is. So based on this review of information and kind of the why and trying to get better support to you so that you can better support your local systems and people experiencing homelessness, we're suggesting exploring a plan that would help to increase that capacity. So in looking at your planning grant, and I think most of you are probably familiar that through the HUD competition, relatively recent, I want to say since 2017 or something, but don't quote me on that, COCs have been able to apply for a planning grant, which is calculated as a percentage of your entire portfolio of COC funding. Or it can be based on a formula that's tied to needs and geography of your community. There is a max allotment for that planning grant, and right now, based on your geography and amount received, you are at that max, which is currently 1.5 million that comes into your COC as a planning grant to support these various activities. So putting your application together every year, which is a huge lift, supporting grantees and getting their applications in, and reporting, and HMIS support, and coordinated entry, and so many of these different pieces, right, that need to be held together in a consistent and hopefully somewhat cohesive way so that it's not putting added burden on people experiencing homelessness. Part of an opportunity here that we're identifying and talking about for your continuum of care is actually dividing the geography to register as 2 or more COCs. And this would be a mechanism that would allow you to go beyond that cap of planning grant dollars and receive as much as another million, 1.3 even million dollars to be able to support these types of activities on a larger scale. And the hope would be on a more localized level. So just to be clear, this is not something that would have a direct and or immediate impact on any program project funding that's received through the continuum of care. You know, there's some kind of technicalities about how the geography is split. But what we're hoping is that this would have an impact to increase competitiveness of the COC over time because of that added capacity at a systems level to support you better locally and the way that you operate and respond to homelessness as a crisis locally. There are a variety of ways that this can be done. And just to be clear, we're working hard and talking with the board and others to make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse on this. We'll talk through some of our next steps and information gathering that we're hoping to do to fill in some of the gaps that we have and that you and the board may have at this point. But this division into 2 COCs could really be technical only. It could be with a shared board and with THN as the collaborative applicant for both continuums of care. Even a combined competition process, but you know, 2 applications would have to be submitted as a part of that, and your renewal pots and prioritization would be divided into two based on how that was established. Katie, Alexa, anything you want to add to that and kind of what the concept is?
I think
Okay,
the only
Matt?
thing that I would add is just making sure that everyone is aware that the planning grant is something that THN, as the collaborative applicant, is the only one that can apply for that and get that grant. So that's the one we're talking about in this instance in terms of adding capacity.
Yeah, so your collaborative applicant is the only one eligible to apply for planning grant funds. And, you know, there would be lots of different ways to slice and dice this. So that doesn't mean that parts of it couldn't potentially be subcontracted or additional staff hired that are based in different areas of the state. Lots of possibility there. But first addressing that capacity and funding piece in order to make those real possibilities, tangible possibilities. Let's go into next steps. We'll kind of share a little bit of timeline, and then we're really eager to have some discussion with you, and also I think we've asked one of the board members to share some thoughts as well. So our next steps, you know, we've really tried to capitalize on processes that have already gathered community input. That is what's driving this direction and the perceived need at this point. We've also had the opportunity to meet with the board. Obviously, this meeting is kind of important to just put this idea out there as an introduction and start to get thoughts, feedback, questions from you. Some groups there locally for some early conversations, Mission Capital with the work and support that they've been doing as consultants, LHC leadership certainly would be important to talk to if we're talking about increasing support to local areas. We want to make sure that they're in the mix. And then over the next few months, meetings with various groups. And we want to make sure that there is ample time here for everybody's voice to be heard, questions to be asked, concerns heard, and that as this is crafted, it's crafted in a way that's meeting real and legitimate needs as a part of the process. Let's go to the next piece and talk about the analysis that we're planning to do and the timeline for that.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. So obviously we'll take a lot of that community input and all those agencies that we'll be talking to, and our team will take that information and really work on an analysis of some different options for the COC. So we'll be looking at things like mapping out various regional service areas for key agencies that work within the balance of state, such as like community action agencies. So what counties do these regional service areas cover? Where is there already a lot of coordination between really important organizations? Because we want to make sure we don't break that up. What communities may have, or counties have a lot in common and should stay together. So we're looking at things like that. We'll be looking at mapping out existing continuum of care funding, so that, for example, if the balance of state does decide to break up into two COCs, that one COC doesn't get all the housing programs or all of just one type of program. You know, Ashley talked a little bit about the planning grant, and depending on options, what does this look like? How will that extra money get used to provide support to agencies? And maybe that means staffing looks a little bit different. Who will get the planning grant? Is that still THN? And then, you know, I just mentioned staffing. What could this look like in order to bring more capacity and support to your local agencies, in order to provide better coordination and services to the people that we're trying to serve? So the plan is that Cloudburst would take the summer to have discussions, that community input with key partners, really analyze all of the information and present in September at the full COC meeting. And so if we can move to the next slide. This is really just a visualization of sort of what we've been talking about in the last few slides. Obviously, we attended the board meeting last month. We're here today. Starting next month through September, we'll have a lot of those community input meetings and analyzing some options, bringing pros and cons to all of these different options that we talk about. And then in September, we will see all of your lovely faces at the full COC meeting for a robust discussion on everything we've gathered. And really from there, your COC will decide what that future should look like. Want to be super clear that at this point, nothing would change. You know, not you will apply for the upcoming NOFO the same as you would. THN is still your collaborative applicant. So these are again just discussions. And nothing has actually changed at this point. So before we hear from you and jump into some discussion, I'd love to invite Courtney as our COC board member to say a few words on behalf of the board. So is Courtney able to come off mute and join us?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Courtney Horton. I'm the coalition coordinator for West Texas Homeless Network, which is the local homeless coalition in Abilene. And then also to hold seat 1 on the COC board. The board has had the opportunity to hear about these options for increasing capacity at our last board meeting. And we just wanted to let everyone know from the board's perspective that we are interested in learning more. A few of us board members will be participating in future meetings to ensure that we maintain a higher level of engagement in the process. Some of us who are actually at the local levels are ensuring that those voices are heard. And so we were glad to see a conducive list that was presented earlier. We are very eager to hear thoughts from various communities, though. So we're asking for partners to give their thoughts, opinions, questions throughout the balance of state so we can make sure that the timeline that we give ample opportunity for everyone's voice to be heard. Mainly too, the Cloudburst has asked me to talk about, so Abilene itself is partnership with Community Solutions, which is a national partner for addressing homelessness from a systems perspective. If you've never seen their work, it's part of the Built for Zero movement. And so when I asked questions regarding the modernization of the balance of state, it was easy for me to think about our partnership with Community Solutions in the fact that they provide coaching one-on-one. So each community that participates in that has that, although they're not in our local community, we have that engagement on a very fairly often basis. And so the expansion of this would lead for the planning, like they said, the planning for there to be more presence from THN and staff members. And I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Can we go to the next slide? So I hope we didn't talk too quickly, but would love to sort of open up the floor. I think as Jim said, everyone is muted. And so if folks could raise their hand, we'd love to see if there are any questions. If people have additional feedback, you know, what additional analysis would be helpful to see in that full COC meeting? How would you want to participate in this project, or what updates would you like prior to the full COC meeting?
I think something that came through in the chat already was a suggestion of an additional group that we should target for outreach. And so I would welcome anything like that as well, right? Like if there are groups in your community or folks that we should be talking with that I mean, the list on a couple of slides earlier was not intended to be exhaustive, but don't assume that we have considered or are planning to talk to those groups. And I think Hope, I think we were planning to drop this PowerPoint in the chat as a PDF so that folks could have that for reference in this conversation. I see Chad Wheeler has a question in the chat. It says, would each region have their own board? And I think that is TBD, right? Like that is certainly a possibility, right? There could be, as I understand it, a shared board between the two continuums of care, but in all likelihood, it would involve representation from the region that is represented specifically. I mean, that's all kind of part of the thing, right? Is that like we want more localized representation in the decision-making processes as they exist. And so my preference would be, right, like that if we split the continuum of care into two, that there would be in fact two boards. Now, whether or not they look like the COC board looks right now based on like seat specialization, or they're really more like county representation or geographic representation within that smaller geography, that all that is TBD. But the intent, at least from my perspective, is to increase regional representation in the governance process.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, Jim. I mean, nothing is set in stone. You certainly want folks that have a that are partners within each COC to be on the board if it is split. But you may have some folks that have a footprint in each COC and would want to would want some coordination between the two boards. Like, again, these are all options to explore. So would love to hear if there are any folks. I definitely saw I think that was the coordinated entry steering committee was the suggestion in the chat. Are there other
Yes, that's correct.
entities
Yep.
that that folks would love to see us talk to?
And Hope, maybe could we just go back to that slide for a second, just so folks can get a refresher of that list in case they haven't gotten the PDF or they're on their phone or something. It was actually, I think you've gone way too far. I think it's like slide 6 or 7, maybe. Right there. Thank you. So, I mean, these groups again are not necessarily an exhaustive group. There's obviously some folks that we have talked about that aren't like explicitly represented would be like public housing authorities, right? We know that especially in certain parts of the state, our public housing authorities have a larger regional footprint compared to a single county. So we want to make sure that we are, considering the needs of all of the groups that are working to address homelessness in whatever capacity.
So I see Teresa's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to read it off and then I'll answer it. And then again, if folks want to try to come off mute, I'm certainly not a Zoom expert, but we want to make sure that we're allowing people to participate in whatever capacity we're able. So, we'll try that. So in the past, funding has gone to the same agencies. Will there be some diversity this time around? That's a great question. So the Continuum of Care program specifically, which is the only pot of funding that the COC has direct control over in terms of like recommendations, is open to anyone that wants to participate, right? Like the competitiveness of an individual applicant is so highly individualized that it's hard to say whether or not a specific agency would be eligible for funding or would be awarded funding through the Continuum of Care process. I think the intent for me and my staff would be to spread as wide of a net as we can, certainly geographically, right? Like within the existing structure, one of our focus efforts right now is getting federal dollars via the COC program into communities where it does not already exist. If we split this COC into 5 different continuums, which I don't think is on the table because there's like the law of diminishing returns comes into play and it's not viable. But like even if we split it into 2, there are still going to be communities that are under-resourced at the jump, right? Like there will still be places where they need additional support, and the goal would be to offer that additional support in a more holistic and comprehensive way via the smaller COC geography. So I don't know that answered your question directly, Teresa. And I would say that right now, if someone is interested in administering COC program funds, I'll put an email in the chat and you can reach out to my staff and we can have that conversation about how to make sure you're as competitive as possible, regardless of the COC structure. Jennifer concurred with Courtney, who said local governments within the continuum of care. And yes, that was one that we identified as a, they're not in the early meeting group, which I think we're talking about a period of 3 or 4 months. So I feel like they're all pretty early meetings, if we're being honest, but local governments are absolutely need to be at the table. I think that they are historically, for the balance of state, a challenging stakeholder group to engage and maintain. So we may be reaching out. In fact, Courtney, I know your name is one that has been referenced previously as a former board member, as someone who might be able to help us kind of open those doors and get those folks to the table. Because absolutely, they are definitely critical to have as part of this conversation. Okay, so now we're getting into some technical stuff. I'm looking at Chad's question, and don't let me slow the conversation down if I start going too slow. So anyone can hop in here, but I understand the current PPRN, or preliminary pro rata need, of the BoS far surpassed our annual renewal demand. Would the preliminary pro rata need of each region be a factor or a concern? So I think the answer to this question, Chad, is, again, it is highly dependent on the analysis and recommendations of the Cloudburst group in terms of where that line is that delineates between the continuums of care. There is absolutely a way that you could draw that line in a way that is not advantageous to all communities. There is also a way that you can draw that line in a way that is advantageous to as many communities as possible. I think the reality is that the preliminary pro rata need, or for folks that don't know what that is, that's the formula that HUD uses to determine how much a continuum of care could theoretically draw down through the COC program. In our continuum of care, the preliminary pro rata need is somewhere around $55 million. The actual number of or balance of projects that exist within our continuum of care is somewhere around $14 to $15 million. So we are so far away from that preliminary pro rata need. It would probably take a period of years, if not decades, to get to a place where PPRN, at least in my estimation, would be a concern if we spend the time and do this process intentionally and in a way that considers that. So there's a lot of activity. Local housing focused collaboratives in addition to LHCs like the Denton County Homeless and Housing and Homeless Leadership Team. That is a great suggestion, Courtney. Thank you. Sam asked, could we make sure we say acronyms for new folks, because Chad's chat looks like Latin to me as a newbie to this stuff? Yes. And if I do it, please call me out, because I will definitely do it as well. So Mike Barnett asks, if this is split into 2 separate COCs, would the total pot of money from HUD increase? And I think that's a really important question. I don't know if the Cloudburst folks want to kind of address that specifically. This is something we've talked about kind of in our smaller group, but I think it's important to spend a little bit of time on here.
Sure. So, I was gonna say, your total pot of money from HUD in terms of projects would not increase. So, you still would have your annual renewal demand, and I think you said you had $14 million. So if we just split it in 2, and you split the COCs into 2, and it's fairly equal, each would have about $7 million in housing programs. What would increase off the bat would be the planning grant funds. And those are those funds that go straight to THN as the collaborative applicant to add capacity to help both current and funded projects, but then also to be more into communities to try and get other entities to apply for new projects. And really, how you stay competitive within the continuum of care NOFO program is to have new projects and apply, and really to be able to select from a good number of projects. I don't know if anyone else would add anything.
No, I think that's great, Katie. I am just gonna highlight BK's comment, even though previously or after you typed that, you typed that we answered your question. So I've often wondered why, given our size, we were not divided into regions for representation. Being said, I love and depend upon the relationships that I've developed at THN and don't want to lose them. I want to be involved in the discussions of how this happens. And at first blush, 2 regions with the shared board seems best. Is it possible for LHCs to set up a Zoom meeting with the same presentation and and have this discussion? Our LHC covers 3 counties that match our COG. Can COGs be used as a point of contact for discussion? Absolutely, yes. And I think it's also important to register that, like, if we split the continuum of care into 2, right? Then we're still talking about COCs that are approximately 100 counties apiece, right? Like, there's still going to need to be, and I think a strong need for a regionalized approach within that smaller geography. I think we considered like that, and that's kind of how we landed at this as a path forward, was that there's no capacity right now to break this COC functionally into smaller regions, that in the way that they need to be I think as intentional as we're hoping for this to look like. So I am imagining that this idea of regionalization will be around for quite a while, and regardless of whether or not we decide in 6 to 9 months or a year to break the balance of state into 2, I think we're going to have this conversation in 2025 and 2026 to make sure that we continue to stay relevant. Because I mean, I meant what I said earlier about Texas in terms of like its population growth. It's really remarkable, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down anytime soon. And so I think we're going to have to stay up on what our governance looks like to make that work for everybody. But your other point, yeah, it seems like we're right on pretty much on the same page in terms of like who we need to bring to the table, LHCs and COGs for sure. All right, let me see here. Any plans to revisit the somewhat, yeah, any plans to revisit, okay, so let's see here. Any plans to revisit the somewhat inequitable allocation of COC planning dollars in Texas as part of this? So in terms of, and I'm gonna take a swing at like what I think you mean, Courtney, and if I don't get it, please, you can message me directly or, put it in the chat. So that is also something that we have tossed around in terms of like an additional capacity. What does that look like, right? I think what wouldn't necessarily be helpful would be another Jim Ward in Austin, trying to help communities from 300 miles away. We talked about potential ways to structure that, where THN sell awards out funds to local homeless coalitions to carry out activities. But again, none of this stuff is set in stone in terms of like how the COC structures that. The only thing that is set in stone, as I understand it, is that the planning grant will go to the collaborative applicant of the continuum of care. So if in the event that there were 2 COCs and THN were the collaborative applicant for both, that money would go to THN first to then distribute as necessary or as appropriate, if that makes sense. I realize I think I'm way over time. We're like oh no, we're not, are we? 3:35, I think is what we have. So, okay, good. I saw a chat from Sam and I thought, oh gosh, am I over? So does that answer your question, Courtney? Oh, wait a second. It's my understanding, no, wait a second. It's my understanding that Tarrant County, I'm just gonna read this out loud. It's my understanding that Tarrant County gets more planning dollars than they theoretically should, according to formula allocations, because the BOS did not always apply for what we were eligible for. I'm gonna have to spend some time with that as a concept, because that would be news to me in terms of that type of inequity. I really don't spend a whole lot of time looking at like other COCs allocations and formulas, and I spend a fair amount looking at ours for the balance of state. And I don't see that playing out, at least in the last 5 to 7 years. Um, it is undeniable, however, that some continuums of care figured this game out a very long time ago. Chicago is one, the Bay Area, San Francisco is another, Houston is a third, right? Like there are continuums in the country that their annual renewal demand, or the amount that's needed to fund the projects that already exist, exceeds their preliminary pro rata need. But I don't think that today the balance of state is contributing to an equity that would exist in that respect. But I'm gonna have to look into that one a little more. Do y'all, does
So
that sound familiar to
Yeah,
anybody?
so HUD, when they look, will either take the higher of the final or preliminary pro rata need, or the annual renewal demand. And that's what they use to do the planning grant. And so Texas Balance of State is applying for the full planning grant that they can. It is $1.5 million. That is the maximum that Chicago and LA and New York and everybody gets. But because your preliminary pro rata need is at 54 million, HUD takes that, and that's how you can then that's the basis of your COC bonus dollars, your domestic violence bonus dollars. Places like Chicago have gotten a lot of those bonus dollars, and so maybe Tarrant County is the same way. And so that's why they do have potentially higher annual renewal demands than their PPRN. I don't know that for a fact, but if you continually score very well in the NOFO, then you're going to continue to get bonus dollars, and and bonus projects, and you will be higher than what HUD originally or has your counties as getting, if that makes sense.
There's a handful. The only balance of state that I think is really in that bucket is the Louisiana balance of state, and somehow they figured out the COC game very early on. Yeah, Connecticut as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, there's a statewide COC. Okay, so let's see here. Stephen Lotta asks, one of the options could include subcontracting with local coordinating entities. I think I mean, at the end of the day, the idea is, how do we increase the planning efforts that exist at the local level, right? I don't know that, like, for example, West Texas Homeless Network, they're a 501c3. Some of our local homeless coalitions are not 501c3s, right? And I'm seeing Courtney shake her head, no, they're not. Some of them, I guess I would actually say many of our local homeless coalitions are not 501c3s, right? So it's really going to depend. However, the goal is increasing that local buy-in, local control, local like direction as part of this effort. Yeah. Reverend Lawson, I want to go back up to something Reverend Lawson said. I think it was, I'm getting lost in the chat, y'all. This chat's it's been a while since I've done this, so and if there's other stuff that I'm missing, y'all let me know. Yeah, if we're helping the homeless know us because we do a lot of boots on the ground outreach. Outreach is the main key to ending homelessness, yes. And I would even take that a step further to say housing focused outreach is absolutely critical to ending homelessness wherever you're at. And so I know Reverend Lawson with the Chosen Ones there in on the Gulf Coast, y'all definitely do a lot of that, the housing focus outreach. So thank you for that. Let's see here. Have I missed anything, in the chat?
I just wanted to clarify that COC
Yes.
program funding will only pay for certain activities, and unfortunately, it does not pay for street outreach. So although that is a very important component of homeless services, it's not something that the COC program would pay for. And so you can't apply for COC program funding for street outreach, only for rapid rehousing, a joint component, they call it, that is transitional housing and rapid rehousing in the same project, and permanent supportive housing.
For clarifying that, Mary, yeah, that is definitely a good point. This is not gonna by itself end homelessness in the balance estate, or whatever COC, kind of ends up as. It is one piece of the puzzle for sure, but there are a number of things to include, diversion, housing focused outreach, coordinated entry. There's a lot that goes into it. Any other thoughts before we go into next steps? So,
Do we
Yeah.
just want to jump to the discussion questions really quickly? I know
yeah,
we
sure. Yeah,
talked a lot about other places.
yeah. So, we've kind of been talking about this. I feel like some folks have had responses to these prompts directly. There's been a lot of questions, which is great. I love the questions. But what additional feedback should we be gathering as part of this process, right? Like we talked about COGS, we talked about local governments, we talked about a couple of other groups, coordinated entry steering committees. What other feedback should we be considering as part of this process? General membership feedback, of course, not least of which is the general membership feedback. So Ty has got something, and that I'm noticing right now that some people have been sending things to hosts and panelists, and some have been sending them to everyone. So I'm realizing that not all the attendees have been able to see the questions that I've been responding to, which, it happens. But if you sent something to hosts and panelists and you did not intend for me to announce it to the whole group, I'm sorry. But it looks like we do have another question that kind of went to hosts and panelists, or more of a statement is there's just not enough funding in general. Rent increases. I know everywhere's seeing the rent increases. It's not just a big city issue. It is a, countrywide issue. But I think Ty's comment, I'm not going to read the entirety of it, but there are some, this is not, again, going to solve homelessness by itself, right? Like it's not going to fix HUD's antiquated formulas. If anything, it's using HUD's antiquated formulas to our advantage, but it's not going to fix some of the other stuff that is broken about how HUD functions. Courtney says, are there still plans to engage the strategic planning committee in this process, or will that be separate? Sorry if that was already stated. Mary, I know that that's something that we've kind of talked about, and I was wondering, maybe could you talk a little bit about how modernization relates to the strategic plan while folks are thinking about the prompts? What I'm talking about specifically is like the additional year on the strategic plan to focus on this.
Yes. So originally our strategic plan for the COC was a 3-year plan, which would mean we're ending it this year before we start a new one. But because the board wanted us to look at regionalization more closely, we are postponing the start of the new strategic plan until 2026. So next year we'll be writing the strategic plan, and we're working with, Ashley mentioned earlier, a group called Mission Capital on that strategic planning effort right now. And so we're kind of marrying the modernization and early stages of strategic planning. We don't anticipate having the strategic planning committee as it was set up before to be involved in the modernization at this point. We're covering a lot of the people that were on the strategic planning committee in some early meetings that we're having on modernization. But I don't think it will reinvigorate the strategic planning committee at this point. You're welcome.
Seeing also a couple of plugs for advocacy, which is always important. What additional analysis would be helpful, right? Like, I know that's kind of a tough question for something that you may not have been thinking a whole lot about an hour ago. But what, if anything, would be helpful for you to see as a general member around this decision-making process? And then I think what I'm most interested in out of all of this is, how do you want to participate, and how and what updates would you like along the way? I kind of toyed with the idea of like a Google form that we could, have people opt into updates, or something like, I don't want to blow up people's mailboxes. My HOA does that. They sent me like 14 messages in the last week, and I'm just like, why are y'all doing this to me? Please stop. So we don't want to like annoy you with things that you're not interested in, but we do want, we want to bring as many people along for the ride as we can. Yeah, so it looks like some reinforcement of like the meetings with stakeholders and presentations to the local homeless coalitions. Tammy Flores Chan, hey Tammy, says maybe a list of local homeless coalitions and stars next to those who have never applied for funds, or where there's never been an applicant. I can do that. I can definitely do that. That would be relatively easy. It wouldn't necessarily correlate directly to a local homeless coalition, but it would correlate to the geography within a local homeless coalition's area, if that makes sense. So, and it may not go back forever, but we could definitely take it back to the last 5 to 7 years. So that's a good one. I like that. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns, complaints? I'm taking the lack of don't email me to that everybody wants regular updates about this project. Okay, let's see here. We've got some more. Sarah from Rancho Valley. In regards to data, I would like to see exactly how the COC would be split, including population and poverty population data for the two groups by county. I think it would also be good to see if any groups within the COC have completed a needs assessment, so that we could think about grouping areas by needs. Yeah, that's a really interesting, and someone else actually from San Angelo was talking to me about grouping areas by needs versus geographically. So that's certainly another way to think about this process. I'm not sure if there are, and that's a place where I'm not sure. For the TA folks from Cloudburst, are there other continuums in the US that have where like the COC are like pockets? So it's maybe not necessarily like contiguous landmass, but like this community is part of one COC. And do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are a few places where you kind of have that bizarre spot in the middle of something that wraps around it.
Okay.
And I think often when we talk about this and redrawing any kind of boundaries, what we really want to think about is what the natural flow of people in your continuum looks like. Where would someone naturally go for services, and making sure that coordination, as much as possible, at least, can tie into some of that movement and traffic, so that it's not increasing barriers or difficulty accessing a continuum of services for people experiencing homelessness. So that's something to think about. I think, again, wide variety of ways that you could do this, and wanting to also really make sure that we're maintaining that person-centered focus, and that it's something that works for people experiencing homelessness in your communities.
That's great. That's great feedback. Thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for those thoughts.
Yeah, really appreciating all of the chatter, and we've made sure our THN is going to make sure and save all of the chat comments so that we can come back to those and use them as a reference point going forward as well. Thank you, everybody, for your input. We really value it.
Yeah, so we can definitely, and actually I'm glad you mentioned that, Ashley, because the chat is being saved as part of the cloud recording, so we're good there. Rich said you might want to look at, I have no idea how to say either of those, except for the one word I know there is Fresno. That's the only word that I know out of what you said as far as pocket continuums. So we can definitely look at that. California is certainly a place that is, there are, isn't there like 40 continuums or something like that in California? It's a really big number. I know that much. So does not have to be the end of this discussion, and in fact, it will not be the end of this discussion. However, if you have thoughts after you've had the opportunity to process, take a look, you save that PDF and you look back through it this evening with a nice cup of tea and the Great British Bake Off on the television. You have thoughts, you can email us, jim@thn.org or txboscoc@thn.org. We'll put those in the chat as it relates to this or anything else that we've talked about so far. We definitely, again, want to hear all sides of this issue and consider all opinions when we're kind of putting this thing together. Thanks, Hope, for putting that back in the chat. If there's nothing else, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is actually still me. So I'm going to talk at y'all for just another minute or two about the SNOFO, or the Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunities. So you may be thinking, Jim, that was like 2 years ago. And it was, in fact, 2 years ago around this time where we were hosting focus groups and webinars with the general membership to develop what we were calling a plan to address severe service needs. The Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunity was a special pool of funding that HUD put together for continuums through a COC or COC program adjacent competitive application process. Through that application process, we submitted approximately $33 million in applications for housing and service projects all over the balance of state. I mean, it was an incredible showing from the communities. I mean, everywhere from San Angelo to Abilene to Denton to Laredo, all the way up and down the east, East Texas and then on the Gulf Coast. It was really, really cool. Unfortunately, HUD, in their infinite wisdom, only selected one project of the more than 12 that were submitted. And that project was funded under the rural set aside, so the rural supplemental notice of funding opportunity, and is intended to target people that are both unsheltered or have histories of unsheltered homelessness, have severe service needs, and are in a rural part of the country or the continuum. So in our COC, Panhandle Community Services, which is a group out of the, as you might imagine, the Texas Panhandle. They kind of do it all. You should check them out. PCS.org, I believe, is their website, but they're a community action agency, a public housing authority, a LIHEAP grantee. They do it all, right, in the Panhandle. Well, now they're also doing rapid rehousing as part of the supplemental NOFO. So Katie Peterson, who you just spoke with, was is rather the HUD TA assigned to the supplemental notice of funding opportunity or SNOFO project. We have been meeting, Katie, myself, and the PCS folks have been meeting for at least the last 6 months to try to get this project off the ground. I think we're really, really close. I think part of what is contributing to this has been, one, the complexity of what's being done for the area, right? Like something like this has never been done in the Texas Panhandle. And unfortunately, you may or may not have heard or may have been affected by the wildfires that occurred in the Panhandle in the first part of 2024. So we're confident that we're going to get that project going in the next couple of months. We'll have HUD TA through December of 2024. Is that right? Or 2025?
2025 at this
Yes.
point.
Yes. So we are working. So one of the things that is on our plate right now is because we developed that plan to address severe service needs through this like really intentional process where we gathered your feedback about, you know, what we want that to look like. And then HUD funded about 11% of what we asked for. We we don't have the capacity as like a lot of other things to carry out the plan as it was originally written. So we're in the process of revising the plan to address severe service needs. If you have applied for Continuum of Care program funding in the last 2 years, you will see that there are legacy components of that supplemental NOFO that are part of the Continuum of Care program and will be part of the Continuum of Care program competition in 2024. But those things will not change. What are changing are some of the kind of planning activities associated with the projects that were intended to be part of this initiative. So we're hoping to have both a project up and running, but then also the COC's plan to provide services to these folks or to folks with severe service needs, rather, revise in the next couple of months, hopefully, but before the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September. It is kind of taking a little bit longer than I think we would have imagined, but at the same time, I don't know that I really imagined that they were going to fund the project to begin with. So it's really exciting, and we'll continue to bring updates to the general membership because that was one of the things that we said we were going to do as part of the COC's plan. But if you're interested to learn more about that, I know the staff at PCS would be happy to chat more with you. Or if you're in the Texas Panhandle and you're wondering how you might be able to participate, or you have folks that you're working with that might benefit from rapid rehousing in the 23 counties of the Texas Panhandle, please, again, feel free to reach out to me and we'll see how we can make that connection. I think that is actually it from me. My voice is about to stop working. I am going to answer one question in the chat real quick, and then I'm going to pass it to Sam. So Tammy says, what does severe service needs look like? And that is a phenomenal question. And like a lot of my answers, it depends. It depends on the community primarily, right? Like y'all and the folks that are providing direct services in your community typically know the community best. I think, and from HUD's perspective with this initiative, they interpreted folks living outside or living in cars or otherwise living in places not meant for human habitation to possess any number of qualities that would kind of contribute to a level of service need that is that exceeds what you might find for people living in shelters or living, in transitional housing or something like that. So I think in the Panhandle, one of the things that was already a really testy situation was housing quality, right? Like the Panhandle, it's very, very extremely rural, and housing, finding quality housing that was affordable for people was a real challenge before the fires. It has been an increasingly difficult proposition post the Smokehouse Creek fire. But it may look different in your community. And I know that in some communities, it was, very much focused on people like encampment abatement, right? Like we want to use these funds to target this specific encampment in our community. And that was an appropriate use of the funds as well. The challenge, I think, for the balance of state is, given our geography, a plan that encompasses both of those things, it almost has to be kind of vague, right? Like they're just so different. And so I don't know if that really answers your question, Tammy. The short answer is it kind of depends. And with that, I will pass it to our development director, our director of development, Sam Foss. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jim. Actually, I'm going to kick off this section. I'm talking a little bit about THN membership and membership in the Texas Balance of State COC. Those are two different concepts. I will talk a little bit about membership in the COC, and you'll see at the bottom of the agenda, anyone who works or lives in the COC's geographic area, including all housing and homeless services projects, are considered to be members of the COC. You don't have to have a membership fee or an application or anything like that. So that's the basics of COC membership, and I'll turn it over to Sam for THN membership.
Thank you, Mary. So I am Sam. I am the Director of Development and Communications at Texas Homeless Network, and I am here to talk about our membership at Texas Homeless Network and kind of give y'all an overview, whether you're members already or not. I think it's helpful, depending on your relationship with THN, to kind of know what we do, the ways to get involved, the ways to get connected to the work we're doing. So Texas Homeless Network, as many of you know, we're a nonprofit membership-based organization. We have a bunch of different programs from our, I know it was in the chat, but our local and national advocacy efforts. We do data collection and research. We host our annual statewide conference on ending homelessness. And we also serve as the host agency for the Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care, which y'all all know about because you're here today. As Mary was talking about, if you're here and you live and work within the Texas Balance of State, or live or work within the Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care, you're considered a general member. That is different from being a Texas Homeless Network member. And so that's really one of the reasons that we're here today, is to kind of talk about the differences between the two. So as a BoS member, really you have a lot of different ways to get involved, a lot of different ways to impact the work. As a Texas Homeless Network member, you get to do all the same things. You also get access to a lot of members only perks. And in order to get those perks and for us to do a lot of the work we do around advocacy, around expanding our programs, we have our annual membership dues. And so we're going to talk about all of our different types of membership. I know probably in this moment, a lot of people are going, well, is my agency a member? Am I a member? I'll have the links for y'all to look at that in a minute, but I just want to talk about the differences. If you are a member, I think it's still really important that you listen, because we actually are also launching a bunch of new incentives and new perks because we are expanding our membership program. So our membership types we have agency members, individual members, and business members. I only have 10 minutes with y'all today, so I can't go over all of them. So we're just going to talk about agency members today. But if you are an individual and you're just here as a stakeholder within the community, that there's different perks, some overlapping perks, and they're all on our website, and we'll talk about those. For an agency membership, this is for an agency that is an agency having it on behalf of their staff. And really, it offers a variety of benefits, one of them being the impact and influence. And so with an agency membership, you really gain really the ability to have the statewide impact of building out educational initiatives, being a part of the collective impact of our work, the influence of our advocacy efforts. We've definitely know that as our network grows, our voice gets stronger, whether it's through partnering with legislators or whoever it may be. The more people that are a part of the movement, the more people listen to what we're doing. And then also just being a part of our transformative outcomes. Some of the more tangible perks are we are building out tailored training and development. So members will have access to a developing suite of training events for all skill levels. So from leadership to direct service providers, members only training opportunities and events to help build professional development, exclusive discounts. So it's already been a thing that you get a membership tier-based discount to our annual conference on ending homelessness. And then also we are launching exclusive member-only discounts to national leading educational platforms with national partners like C4 and NEH and a variety of other partners, and we'll continue to build that out beyond learning platforms, but that's where we're starting. So that's really exciting. We're also launching networking and collaboration opportunities. We'll have a cohort for direct service providers to connect virtually and really be able to ask questions and have dialogue and have connection with folks from across the state to brainstorm and work together throughout the year. And then also leadership for homeless service leadership cohort for directors and C-suite level folks to do the same thing of that networking and collaboration that may just look a little bit different because of the types of things they're working on. Also, the increased visibility. You're featured on our website, our platforms, reaching our 16,000 followers. And the way that we're really amplifying and building that out is you'll have an opportunity to have your agency highlighted and share your successes and your projects and the things that are going on by submitting your highlights to us, and we'll periodically share them as we're able. The other new one that we're launching that is exciting is we will be connecting, we're building a connection between corporate volunteers and our member agencies. We get a lot of outreach from corporations looking for opportunities for their staff to volunteer. And so we'll essentially have members be able to submit reoccurring programmatic activities that we'll be able to share with their corporate partners that they can select from our members and see which ones fit their needs. Our membership, like I said before, is annual dues based on agency budget. It's strategically designed to kind of fit the diverse needs of all of the different agencies across our state while still offering all of the same benefits to everyone. So we have agency 3 through agency 7. We're restructuring these a little bit because of the new incentives. And so our costs are changing a little bit and the tiers are changing a little bit. I can't go over all of the tiers today because we're limited on time, but there's the breakdown on our website I'll share, but I wanted to look at agency 7 just for reference. So say you're an agency 7 member, that means you're an organization that has a budget over 1.5 million. Your annual cost to join as a THN member is $750. You get access to all of those benefits, including the THN conference discount, which is up to $525. So that agency 7 gives you an opportunity for 7 staff to attend the conference with $75 off for up to 7 staff. So you have up to $525 off for a total benefits value of everything I just listed of over $1,500. So though you're investing that $750, you're walking away with a surplus of over $800 more of value from our discounts to our platforms. And so while you're definitely having a little bit of a membership cost, I think it's a really valuable thing for y'all to join. And particularly the reason I wanted to bring it to y'all today, and depending on your relationship with your team, it's good to look into it because our annual conference on ending homelessness registration will launch next month. And so that annual discount for our conference for each tier will be very relevant very soon. And we have been selling out of conference registrations every year. And so it's a great month to figure out and plan as a team on if you can join and making that commitment to become a member agency so that you can register and get that conference discount. You can, of course, register for the conference without being a member, but it's definitely worth it to join. So we have the info for how to check if you're a member. The first thing I wanted to share is a link for our page that shows our current supporters. I want to show it because it's where you'll always see and be able to check on when you're added. I add these monthly, so it's not daily updated. I'm the one updating it and I'm the only one, so I can't do it daily. But I did actually pull them last night. And so I do have a link that's a little bit easier to look at of that second link. That's the tiny URL that has a PDF of a list of our current members. And so if you don't see your agency listed, that means you're not current on your membership. So that may mean it just expired or you haven't been a member. So you may want to renew or join if you haven't joined. You can learn all about the different memberships if you're also interested in becoming an individual member through that link for our membership page. It also lists out all of those incentives to show whoever you want to show so that you have all of that info. And then also, oh, I don't know why I won't show my contact page. I'll pull that up in just a second, but I also want to drop the link for the conference, which if you're not on our THN newsletter, if you're only on the BoS newsletter, it's helpful to get on the THN newsletter as well, because that's also where I share the whole kit and caboodle about our conference updates. So if you plan on attending, you might want to join both just so that you can stay in the loop about everything going on. So that's not a picture of our full team. I couldn't put a picture of our full team, but that's from a recent conference. But I have the contact info for how to get in touch with me if you have any questions about membership, if you have any things that you need. But I just wanted to share with y'all because I really hope that you'll join. I think it's a really exciting program, and I'm really excited about all we're offering.
Thank you, Sam. I wanted to point out, Tim Davenport Herbst, you must have gone to the link right now.
Weird.
He's saying the join now button is not visible on Safari on iPad.
That's the exact link for agencies, but I'll look into that because it's mobile friendly and it's checked. So I don't know if an iPad is just a trickier platform, but I'll look into it. Oh, for individuals, I'll look too. I'll put that in as well.
Well, thank you, Sam. We appreciate you sharing benefits of THN membership with us. And that does bring us to the end of our meeting. We thank you so much for joining us today and wanted to make sure you know, as you see on the agenda, the next meeting will be held on Wednesday, September 11th in Houston at the Omni Galleria and by webinar. It's our annual meeting that we like to have both in person and by webinar. And it's the morning of the first day of the conference that Samantha mentioned. And I'll harken back to what the Cloudburst group folks told us. That meeting will also focus very heavily on COC modernization. So Cloudburst is going to come back to us to talk about some possibilities of how we might move forward as a COC with modernization based on the work that they're going to do between now and then. So if you're able to join, we'd love to see you then as well. And Tammy, thank you for the reminder. If you're a person with lived experience yourself, or you know people with lived experience of homelessness, or you work with people with lived experience of homelessness, current or in the past, we're always looking for committee members. And so for the lived experience committee and for any of our other committees, and you can find information about committees on our website. And just a note that THN staff will be on the call for about 15 minutes after the meeting officially ends. If you have something that you'd like to share with us or ask us, talk with us about, we'll be available for that. And with that, I see a question, Sam, for you. Will they open the block of rooms when you open registration?
Yes.
Great. And looks like maybe Kelly has a question. If there's nothing else, I think we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And again, thank you so much for coming today. And we will hopefully see you at the September meeting, if not before.
Oh,
Go ahead,
we'll see you
Jim.
before then. Oh, no, I was just gonna say, we'll see you before then. Thanks, everybody.
If you're not on the current members, you are not up to date on membership. I updated that all yesterday.
It's great to see so many people here. We really appreciate it. And we are open to your questions and ideas.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with the wide range of representation that we had from different communities, different types of organizations. takes all of us.
Did we never put the BOS email in the chat? I never did put the BOS email in the chat, did I?
put it
Said I
in
was
there.
gonna do it. Oh, you did?
Yeah, yeah, folks got it.
Dude, you're the best.
True.
Thanks, y'all.
Wait, what did you say about the chat?
Oh, mentioned a couple times that I was gonna put the BOS email in the chat, and I
Oh.
neglected to do it, but Hope did.
Mary did it too, so
I
folks got
did it too,
twice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, y'all. Thank y'all.
I was just getting ready to like double check that the chat was actually saved.
It should be. It should. I think it gets saved with the. Well, now it's actually a meeting. I'm not for sure about their. About the webinar
I
settings.
think if
It looks like if you go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I found it. It
you're
was
probably gonna say the
Friday.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, y'all, my internet connection went unstable. What was said, Mary?
I was just gonna say, if you go to the chat box at the bottom and hit the three dots,
Save chat.
Yeah.
save chat.
Yes, no, I did that. I just didn't know
Okay.
how it saved it. And I figured it out and it saves in like the text format, so it's
Oh.
real ugly.
There it goes to your
But-
downloads or something.
It's there.
But yes, it doesn't look pretty.
No. But I'll make sure that I send that to y'all in case our Cloudburst partners want it.
I also took notes so I can maybe help them navigate through that chat more easily if I summarize. Like a lot of groups were talked about as ones that we should talk with. And so I'll make a list of those.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That list could have been interpreted as an exhaustive list, and I wish I would have anticipated that.
Yeah, you said it though,
Thanks,
so
Kelly.
that was good.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think now that the chat has slowed down and nobody's asking us questions, perhaps we could just go ahead and go.
I think we can shut it down. Anything else from the folks that are remaining on the line? I think let's shut it down.
All right.